You are listening to Hitplay, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. So, I've been thinking a lot about how we talk about menopause, even 5 years into this show. I see women in our Hitplay Not Pause group use language like, I just gave up and went on hormone therapy, or I really wanted to fight through this on my own. And I feel like maybe we've set up menopause as this adversary to beat into submission rather than a natural biological change that we will all find ourselves working through at some point in our lives. And well, it can just lead to unnecessary suffering because it leads us to view hormone therapy as a last resort, as opposed to one of the tools that we consider out of the gate when symptoms start sending our quality of life sideways. So I really appreciated this week's guest, Dena Lewis, for sharing her journey. Dena thought that she could outrun, outnutrition, and outsupplement menopause. And well, menopause, which for her came swiftly through surgery, had other ideas. And through mood swings and soaking night sweats and hair loss and a relentless barrage of symptoms, Dena did continue to run 10 miles a day, which we'll get to that in the show as well. But she also sought hormone therapy that made the rest better. A lifelong runner and cancer survivor, Dena opens up in this conversation about how she's navigated her pretty complicated health and menopause journey. And just a heads up, we also wade into some pretty heavy but really important waters in this episode. Dena speaks candidly about surviving 2 assaults while running. And female runner safety is something that makes my blood boil. It makes me so very angry that we have to worry about just being in this world. And Dena took her raw emotions and put them in action and created a business called Running Mate, which is like Uber for runners. It's an innovative, safety-focused app that pairs verified runners with compatible partners based on pace and distance and time of day. And it's just a really great way to channel all of those feelings into something productive. And she shares that journey with us as well, because being a midlife woman in the startup space is its own challenge. So you can learn more about her and this really important work and check out Running Mate at getrunningmate.com. I'll link that in the show notes to make it super easy to find. I really hope you appreciate Dena and her work as much as I do. All right. Oh, just a side note before we get to the rest. Since it's literally 100 degrees as I'm sitting in my office recording this, when Dena and I sat down to talk, it was still winter, and she shares how she actually got a chance to build a rare snowman in Florida. And though I'm not a winter lover, that actually sounds pretty good at this moment. Anyway, okay, before we get to it, give us a follow at Feisty Menopause on Instagram and Facebook. Come on in and join our private Hitplay Not Pause Facebook group where you can bounce ideas off of thousands of women just like yourself. Go into those show notes and sign up for my free weekly Feisty 40 Plus newsletter. We have 50,000 of you now getting that in your inbox each week, and that is rad as hell. Thank you, as always, for your 5-star ratings and kind reviews. They are totally the wind beneath my wings on many days. And if you haven't checked out our brand new suite of excellent feisty courses, including Navigate Menopause, the Hormone Therapy Quick Start Guide, and the Perimenopause Starter Pack, head into the show notes and check those out too. They are packed with advice that has helped thousands of women just like you. All right, enough of me. Let's have a few words about our awesome sponsors and get on with the show. All right, Dena, welcome to Hitplay Not Pause. We just got done talking before I hit record that you were building snowmen on the beach, and it's pretty wild.
It was crazy. I took a picture because I'll probably never see it again in my lifetime.
Yeah, that is something. So let's get right into it. I mean, you've got a new running business, you have a history with running. I don't have a sense of how you got into running. How did you get into being a runner?
So I kind of came about it later in life. I have two kids that are very close together in age, and for me, it was almost like mental health when they were babies to put them in a stroller and take off. And it started out just kind of walking, and then that progressed into running, and then from there, as they got a little bit older and went to preschool, I started running races. Started, I think, like most people, with a 5K, and then ended up doing ultras and triathlons, many years down the road, but it just kind of progressed naturally that way.
And how old are those babies now?
One is 20 or actually she's 19 turning 20 in March, and then the other one turns 21 this weekend. So for
Oh.
20 plus years I've been running. I did things in college and younger in life, but never took up the distance that I do now. But so like I said, for me, it was just more about that mental health, getting outside. They were so little and they're only 13 months apart. And so being inside with them all day, every day, and just not kind of having that time for myself was stressful.
Yeah.
And so that was really where I had the side by side stroller. I'd give them some Cheerios, and for me, it was literally my quiet time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure you're not alone in that. So I heard on another podcast I was listening to in prep for this one that you run 10 to 12 miles a day, 6 days a week. Is that true?
It is true, actually. And I'm sure there are probably running coaches, I've said this before, that are listening to this podcast going, this girl is like, she's doing it all wrong. um, but no, I mean, I do. I run between 10 and 12 a day. It is, my kids are obviously older now. I go super early in the morning typically. And it is, when I say it's necessary for me, it's part of how I start my day. It's a habit. I get up, I have my routine in the morning. I take off. And if I'm not getting between 10 and 12, I really don't feel like I'm accomplishing much. And I don't say that to make anyone feel like 3 or 4 is not a lot, because it is, but I just don't get the same mental benefits of just going 3 or 4 miles. As a matter of fact, there's days that if I can't do the full 10 or 12, I'm like, I just might as well not go at all. So I just don't feel like I'm accomplishing a lot if I'm not running those distances. But yeah, it's true. I do it. And typically Sundays are my days off. Sometimes it'll be a Friday, just depending on what's going on. But unless it's lightning outside, I'm going rain, shine, 100-degree Florida weather, snow. It doesn't matter. I was running last week in the snow and ice, and people probably thought I was crazy, but I do it either way.
How long have you been doing that?
So the distance for me, 10 to 12, has been within probably about the last 5 years. When I started running ultras, I've done a few ultras. Obviously, training for those requires longer distance. And that's really where I kind of got that passion for it, and even the endorphins. And I don't know, it's endorphins are addiction. And I don't know if that's part of it for me. I don't consider it to be an addiction because I see myself as such a better person when I'm able to get out and exercise and clear my head. It's just the time when I am de-stressing. I am strategizing my day. I think a lot about the app. I think a lot about what we have coming up, the things we need to do. And it just clears my head and my space so that I can be better for everybody, my family, my job, everything throughout the course of the day. So for about the past 5 years, I've really picked up on that distance.
I guess the big question that I have I mean, I'm a cyclist who runs. I identify mostly with my bike life, but I do run and I'm training for an ultra now. And the question that immediately pops to my mind, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, is I relate to everything you said, and then I go, but how? Like how do you not get worn down? How have you not been injured? All of those questions. Like, or have you? Or what do you do to support that? Or are you
Yeah.
just
So
fortunate?
you know what? I do get asked that a lot. Like injury, that's probably the number one question people ask me. Well, the top two things people always ask me is, how do you eat? And are you always injured? And I'm going to knock on wood because I've never had a major injury. Now, I think also part of my problem, or maybe not a problem, but my benefit, is that I feel like, because running that sort of distance, I probably live with a threshold of pain that most people might find uncomfortable. Yes, I crack and pop when I get out of bed in the morning, but that's just normal to me because that's the life I've had for so long. I do suffer sometimes from like sciatica on my left side. I stretch, I do a lot of rolling and things like that, but I not again, knock on wood, never any serious injuries. And I don't know, I just push through it. I power through it. And as I've gotten older, I realized that that powering through mentality is so much more important to me because it does affect so many other things in my life that I can't seem to fight with age that's creeping up on me. And so that's another reason why I stay so focused on doing it and then try to supplement with my diet for, strengthening my bones, and all the things I have to worry about as I'm aging.
So let's dovetail straight into that because you're 52, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm guessing that you have run through the menopause transition, into the menopause transition. Like, where are you in that process?
So I am in full menopause right now. And yes, I started
Meaning
out
that you are in perimenopause, like you are not postmenopause yet.
correct. Yep,
Okay.
I'm perimenopause. Yep. I started running, prior to obviously 20 some years ago. I went through, I feel like my journey was probably very similar to a lot. I started out, and hopefully I can, talk about this, but
You can
I
talk
started
about anything.
out with, okay, cool. I started out with a partial hysterectomy just because of reasons that it needed to happen as I was getting older, and then still had both my ovaries. Ended up with an ovarian torsion, which was an emergency surgery procedure on
Ooh.
my left ovary. For about a month, I had been telling my doctor something wasn't right. And when I would lay on my back, you could literally feel like almost like a lump. And he felt it. He's like, I feel it. But they would do ultrasound and everything was normal. So it literally crept up on me in the middle of the night one night. I woke up, couldn't breathe, grabbed my husband, passed out. And then I woke up, they were rolling me into surgery. So I had an emergency surgery to take out my left and then found a mass on my right about a year later. So the doctor told me before surgery, he was like, "You're going to wake up and you're going to feel like crap." And I said, "Okay, that's great. I love it." And, but I was determined, that I'm going to be that woman who was going to fight through it. I'm not going to be like my mom. I run, I eat good, I'm active. This is not going to take me down. There's much bigger things that I have to worry about. And he was right. I woke up and I felt like absolute, and I'm not going to say the word, but, and I tried to fight through it. And then after about 3 weeks, I showed up in his office. I said, I don't care what you have to do. Give me a pill. I don't care. But I literally feel like I am just going to lose my mind. So still kept running though. And I
What were
feel
you experiencing? Because you went straight into hard menopause, right?
yeah, I did. Yep,
Yeah.
straight into because I lost I kept the one ovary,
Okay.
produce, yeah, for, after my emergency surgery. But yeah, when they took the second one out, I mean, that's what he meant. When you wake up, you're going to feel like crap because it was straight in, no easing into it. It was everything. It was everything you think. It was moodiness. Night sweats were unbelievable. I was tired. It was affecting my ability to work out, my diet. Like I just felt like everything, my hair. I was noticing my hair was starting to thin already at such a rapid pace. My skin, like all the things that you are just, it's not going to happen to me, and again, I was gonna supplement my way through it, just I'll take something for my hair, I'll take something for my skin. And then I just found myself feeling bloated and gross because I was taking all these supplements and none of them were working. And so I did go on, a menopause, a pharmacological for quite some time that obviously had its own health risks. And I didn't want to do that long term, but it was literally the only thing until I started realizing I needed to balance my hormones that would get me through every day where I wasn't waking up, 3 and 4 times a night having to change my pajamas because I was sweating so bad and laying in a pool of sweat. So yeah, but I ran through all of that. I just continued to work out and run. And now I am still in menopause, but managing the symptoms a whole lot better and am really doing it more holistically because I just feel like I was able to get a grasp on it and now doing it more holistically through hormone balancing and that kind of thing.
So are you not taking estrogen anymore?
Yeah, I'm taking estrogen,
Okay.
and then taking testosterone. Yep.
You don't need the progesterone. Or you,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, don't need the progesterone. So one other thing about me is I had a double mastectomy in 2017. So that also played into the hormones and what I
Oh,
take
yeah.
and what I don't take. Was a mass on my right breast, and so I lost both of my breasts. I had a total mastectomy.
But there's okay with the hormone regimen that you're on now.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, because it
yeah.
was not estrogen positive. Yes.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a whole nother world.
Yeah, I just
Kind
guess
of bad.
I just sort of froze in my tracks
Yeah.
because I did not know that. I didn't know that you had had the mastectomy too.
Yeah.
That's a that was 2017, did you say?
Correct. Yep.
Wow, that's a lot. You've been through a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been crazy. My mom had breast cancer. Hers was above 60, so I wasn't really at risk of it being genetic. But then I started having all these other issues and luckily found a really good doctor that said, you know what? This was before we were really talking about hereditary cancer screening. And she said, you know, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Cause again, this was before this was covered by insurance. She said, but I really think that this is something we need to do for you based on a lot of my health issues and then things that happened in my dad's side of the family prior to those women being 40. All three of my aunts had breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
So, and it was because of that age that put me at risk. And sure enough, I had hereditary screening and came back positive for one of the mutations. And so that's when we started talking about potentially doing a prophylactic.
Mhm.
But then it just progressed. So,
So, do you support your running with other exercises now? Do you do resistance training? Especially I'm thinking your bone health and your muscle health, like all of that?
yeah, I do strength training and then I also do yoga.
Okay.
Swimming, I wish so badly that I could be better at swimming. I would love nothing more than, you know, to be in a pool more than I am, because it's so good for us too as we get older. But swimming is one of those things that has eluded me my whole life. I don't know, maybe I'll get brave one of these days and get and try it again. But yeah, yoga and then strength training is a lot of what I do. But even with the strength training, with my age, even that's becoming a challenge because I can't build muscle the way I used to. So, you know, it's again one
Even
of
with
those.
the testosterone, that's not helping?
Yeah, it's crazy. So I do tablets compounded. I
Mhm.
know my doctor keeps trying to push me towards the pellets, but for some reason I'm resistant to it. Don't ask me why. I just am.
The
And
medical societies kind of agree with that. I mean, millions of women use them, and I don't want to like have a bunch of people adding me because of they love their pellets, but they can be problematic. So,
yeah, yeah. And I just am, I don't know. Truth be known, I'm going to completely disclose when she told me I couldn't run for 2 or 3 days after getting the pellets, I'm like, well, that's not an option for me. Sorry, we're going to take the tablet. So I have it compounded and I still don't absorb it the way that I should or the way that she would like for it to be absorbed. So I don't get as much of the testosterone. So could it be placebo effect? I don't know because my testosterone levels are still pretty low.
yeah. Do you run the same pace every day or do you vary it up? I mean, is it
I
just like
varied
a,
it up.
yeah.
Yeah, I
What does
do
that
vary
look
it up.
like?
So my paces can go anywhere from 8.5 to 9, and then sometimes upwards of 10, just depending on, you know, what I'm going through that day. Or so I'm not like a super fast, you know, I'm people pass me and
Not
I'm
super
okay with that.
slow either.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a,
I'm totally fine with that. I'm good with it. I actually laugh when people pass me, you know, and then I see them walking a little while later. I'm like, I'm still here. So
yeah, I didn't know if there was a recovery pace. I just keep trying to wrap my head around what you're doing, but
I
you're
know.
doing it.
I know, it's crazy. It's so funny. I have my watch, you know, that's got all my and that's another thing, like, I can't seem to bring myself to switch up what I use because all my miles, you know, are tracked, and when you start keeping up with that and looking at all the miles that I've run over the years and what I've tracked, and it is a huge accomplishment. I mean, I like it, but yeah, I just do it. I don't know. My husband says there's support groups for people like me, so I don't know.
Maybe. And I guess my last question on that, have you had your bone density tested?
I do get that done pretty frequently. There's a
Okay.
couple of things I do go in about every 6 months and get checked. I don't get my bone density checked every 6 months, but I do have, a history in my family with my grandmother specifically. And so I do keep an eye on that, but I do go and get like my potassium and my sodium and all the important things to my B12 and all that kind of stuff checked just to make sure they're all in check. And then my heart. It's crazy to be an ultra runner and need a heart doctor, but I do have a heart doctor and I do get my heart checked pretty frequently because I also get these crazy chest pains from time to time. And they used to scare me, but there's actually nothing wrong. It's just for the distance that I run and the consistency that I do it. It's just oxygenation to the blood or to the heart rather. And so I do go in about every 6 months to a heart doctor and just make sure everything's good to go. Especially as I get older, it's just one of those things I don't want it to sneak up on me and be a surprise.
And your doctor knows what you're doing is down with that?
Yeah, she actually thinks it's great. I've had 2 heart doctors, one when we lived in Texas and then one now the heart doctor I have when we moved back to Florida, and my heart doctor in Texas actually said, "If I could just have half my patients do what you're doing, I wouldn't need to see them anymore." So, that kinda made me feel good, but yeah, no. Listen, I don't recommend people run to
I'm not yeah, that's not the point of the show.
So
How do you support you mentioned a little bit about the nutrition. I'm just curious, like, what does that look like? Are you tracking things? Or are you just eating intuitively? Do you make sure you get enough protein? Like, what does that look like?
yeah, so I don't really track heavily, and I will tell you, and again, this is nothing against anybody who does it, but I don't do the gels. I'm just
I
not
don't either.
somebody that's ever been able to process those really well. So I'm not doing any of that other, stuff. Honestly, a lot of it for me, and this is going to sound crazy, but especially when I'm running these long distances or when I do an ultra, my recovery is bananas and chocolate milk.
Hmm,
Those are
that
my
makes
go.
sense.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I like them. I like the way they taste. I can handle the calories. I digest them well. So bananas, chocolate milk. I do a lot of peanut butter, beef jerky, that's my friend too. So a lot of protein that, and then about 2 or 3 times a week. I don't carb load either. I'm not one of those people that carb loads, but 2 or 3 times a week, I can tell that my body needs more carbohydrates than what I have. And so I've done this now for so long. I just listen. I listen to what my body needs and it will also tell me when I need more sodium. I can almost always, you know, to the T know, okay, you've got to eat some salt. And I do the iodized salt because that's, the best absorption rate. So if I need salt, I salt. I pretty much salt everything all the time, and even my doctor has said, "You are totally fine with salting, just about anything you put in your mouth if you want to." So, I do. I salt a lot of things. My sodium levels are always pretty good, so
Yeah, I mean, you're running in Florida
yeah,
for,
exactly.
and everybody has such a unique response to sodium. We've long heard the DASH diet and cutting sodium, but now we know that that's just not across the board for everybody. It it's such an individual response to sodium intake. So
Yeah,
yeah, you seem fine.
yeah. So, I'm
Working with
pretty
your doctor.
simple, honestly. I'm pretty simple. I don't get crazy with all the other I don't know, I just listen to my body. I feel like I've always it's guided me this far and this long, and I don't know, I just keep listening to it, so
I'm down with that. I kind of follow the same routine. So you have a company and we can, we're going to pivot to some harder conversation here. We can talk about this as little or as much as you care to, but I heard you on the Tough Girl podcast. I've been on that too. She does such a good job. And you've been more vocal, I hear about it as late, but you were assaulted on a run close to your house. Is that correct?
correct, yeah. I've actually been assaulted twice,
By the
but
same person?
no, no, 2 different times, many years apart. The one you've probably heard me talk about was the one it happened in 2010,
Okay.
and, again, my kids were babies. So, I mean, if you look at their ages now, they were pretty young. They were in school, but they were pretty young. And what was unique about this run is that it was not super early in the morning. It was actually daylight, and it was a pretty crowded area. And so the fact that it happened then and not when I was more fearful of it happening, which is in the dark, is pretty ironic. But yeah, so I was assaulted, and after it happened, I was really in such disbelief that it happened and shock that I ran home. I didn't know I was processing everything, and I know that that probably sounds crazy And when I talk about it, I did. So let me just say this: I did not report it, and I didn't report it. And a lot of people, the first thing they say is, "My God, why not?" Or "Why didn't you call the police?" or whatever. But until you've actually been in that situation, and this is why when I talk to women who've been through similar situations, I can relate to if they don't report it. For me, my reasons for not reporting it was because he left bruises on parts of my body that I would have to expose if I went to the police. And that just wasn't an option. I was still trying to process what happened. And then I wanted to just pretend like it didn't happen. So to the point that I did not even tell my husband that night when he got home from work what had happened. And so, again, I was still in shock. I was still, and that's what I've been told, or what I was told after going through therapy, is that shock looks different for a lot of people, but that was the emotion I was, or what I was processing, or what was happening. So anyway, I was in shock, didn't report it. Woke up the next day, of course, thinking to myself that didn't really happen, or what did I do? Like, I kept thinking to myself, what did I do? Why did this happen to me? Was I wearing the wrong thing? Did I put off this vibe? I mean, there was just all these things running through my head. And so went on about my day, took my kids to school, got dressed, just tried to push through it. And then it was 3 days later, it was a Sunday night. It was really late at night. My husband was going to take the red eye out that night for work, and our doorbell rang. And I was thinking, because my kids were already in bed, and I was thinking, who in the world? Our friends all have small kids. They wouldn't be ringing our doorbell. Our neighbors, they wouldn't be ringing our doorbell. And so when I opened the door, he was standing there. And I screamed. My husband came running. The guy took off. And so that at that point was when I told my husband what had happened, because my reaction was probably a little over shock to him that I would respond that way to someone just ringing our doorbell. And so I told him what happened, and we called the police, and the police did find him. He was actually hiding in our backyard.
Oh my God.
And so they arrested him. He was arrested for trespassing, but that was all he was arrested for, because I never filed a police report. So he was released a couple of days later. I did not know he was released until I saw him again. So, don't know how long he'd been following me. The assault occurred about a mile from my house, so clearly long enough that he knew where I lived. He knew my pattern. I became like this. So there's actually a statistic. It's 21% of women will stop an activity completely if they've gone through a traumatic event.
Well,
And
especially if
so,
he's still out there. Are you still running every day knowing that
no,
he is out? Okay.
no, I wasn't. I stopped running
Well, at that
completely.
point, you weren't doing this.
Yeah,
Right.
I just stopped, and it became to the point where I
Did he live
almost.
in your neighborhood? I'm sorry. I don't.
No, he was actually homeless,
Okay.
and so he was in the area. He was in the general vicinity, don't know where. He would show up randomly in different places, but I never saw him again. I saw him one more time, but then not again. But for me, I just had this fear that he was always there.
Oh, of course he did.
Yeah, so it was pretty bad to the point that I just, even to take my kids to school, I would put them in the car in the garage, lock the doors, and then not open the garage door till everyone was in the car and we were all situated and ready to go. And
That's
that's really
terrifying.
the life I lived for a while. I did go through therapy because I realized I was also starting to project. I didn't even want to take my kids to school because I was afraid something was going to happen to them. So there was all this that was happening that I never understood was a result of trauma, which has also made me a lot more, how do I say that? Like, I don't want to say less judgmental, but more tolerant of people, because you just really don't know what someone's been through, which could also be the reason why people behave that they do in different. And that's not excusing anything, but
Yeah,
just
yeah.
I realized that all this was, I didn't know at the time it was all a result of the trauma. But it was. And so I had to get help. I had to talk to somebody to try to work through it and get through it. And then we ended up moving out of the area, not for that reason, but for other reasons. I got back to running. Again, my mental health was much better. And then fast forward, I had another assault um, some years later. And
Running?
the interesting yeah, yeah, while I was running. And the interesting thing is that after, so I'd gone through self-defense. Um, on the second assault, I was carrying a mace. I was actually carrying a mace on the first assault too, but I couldn't get to it, which also made me more aware of how I carry, where I carry it, what I do, all that kind of stuff, which is one of the reasons why we do education seminars with Running Mate, because I realized just carrying something and knowing what to do with it are two totally different things. But when the second one occurred, I was carrying a mace with that one too, and was so wrapped up in the moment that I could have easily accessed my mace and didn't. So this is to say that I've had two assaults and still wasn't prepared for the second one the way that I should have been. So yeah, it's happened twice.
Did
Running
you
mate.
report that one?
Yes, I did. I called the police immediately on that one. That one was not quite as traumatic, but I also don't really talk about that one very much just because it happened not that long ago and it's still an open situation.
Okay, I understand
So
that.
yeah. So that one I kind of just mentioned, but don't really discuss very much.
And you're still running and you feel okay.
I am. Yeah. And um part of it was, I think, is that I studied a lot, or I learned a lot. I didn't study, but I actually went to and spoke to a criminologist about victimology, and never really understood victimology, and how certain people can be targeted. And that's not to say that is always what happens. When a bad person is going to do something bad, we give them the opportunity, and unfortunately, female runners are a prime opportunity because we tend to be distracted. We are thinking of a lot of other things when we're running, and we are putting ourselves in situations that we're just easy targets. And so I did change some things, which I always hate to tell women to do because that's that power and that freedom and that empowerment really that we should be able to have. But when we train women, we talk to women, we're like, just think about these things. These are things that you should at least be thinking about. That doesn't mean you need to do them, but at least be thinking about them to make yourselves less of a risk. And again, it disgusts me that we actually have to have those
I
conversations.
hear you.
And then one of the other things we like to do is really, we get involved with men who want to make a difference because it is going to start with them. They need to do more educating on how women need to be treated, the kind of respect that women deserve from the perspective of our space being respected, even when it comes to male runners. If you're going to come up on a woman, let them know you're there. You might not mean anything by it, but you don't know what's going through their brain when you come up behind them on the left or the right. Let them know you're there. That's something so simple that can be done.
We'll talk about the company you started for all this in a second. I'm curious because trauma stays within us and it can manifest in stress and make the whole menopause transition harder and all of that. How have you been processing all of this trauma that you're not just in a sympathetic fight or flight state all the time?
That's a good question. I think that one of the things I do talk a lot about is that I think I'm desensitized to a lot of things because of my trauma. And so for me, fight or flight looks a lot different than it might for somebody else because I've been through, you know, something traumatic. As an example, harassment to me looks very different than it might to someone who's never had a horn honk or, something like that. That kind of stuff to me is background noise, but for a lot, for all women, it should be offensive because it is. But for me, because of what I've been through, it's not as offensive. But I have to think about that when I'm, talking or speaking to other women, is that we all have a different threshold. So to try to answer your question, I think that because of what I've been through, I don't constantly live in a fight or flight. I am constantly thinking about, if something were to happen again, how am I going to get out of a situation? But I also don't think I'm invincible. And I get asked that question a lot too. You've survived two. Do you think that you are invincible? And
I would never ask that.
no, like I absolutely don't. I don't feel like that's ever the case. What I do think though is that I'm a very big believer in purpose and in things happening in life, good or bad, and trying to take and find good out of the bad, which is what I've done in the best way that I know how. and try to keep moving forward with that, because I consider myself one of the lucky ones. I got to go home.
Yeah.
I got to see my kids at the end of the day. And there are women out there, like Alyssa Lockett's and Lake and Riley, and the list goes on, and Molly Tibbetts, and the list goes on and on and on, who never had the opportunity to see their family again. And so I consider myself lucky, and I also think that because of that, and I definitely have gone way off topic of what your question was, but because of that, I think that I'm trying to take something bad that happened and turn it into good.
Yeah, no, I don't think that was off topic at all. I really don't. So tell us a bit about the company you started. You started Running Mate, the app in the company. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so corporate America has been my career. I've been in med device my whole career, and I was in a hotel room and was putting my shoes on one early morning during COVID, even though I was still working and the rest of the world was on lockdown. And I literally thought to myself, I would pay someone to run with me right now. And that's kind of where I left it, and then I thought, am I still going to put my shoes on and go? Because the world was super scary. And I went. Um, Fast forward a couple of like weeks goes by, and I get like this little shove again of, you really should do something with this. And I ignored it. And then we come out of COVID, and I was in an Uber, and it was a full on push. And I thought, we ride in the car with strangers. Like, this has become the norm. Our moms always told us, don't ever get in the car with a perfect stranger. And now not only do we do it, but we pay
You
people.
pay them. I know.
So it was then that it kind of came to me, like, why isn't there something like this for women? Why can't we just have a buddy to go run with us when we want to go for a run? But it's completely on our terms. For me, it wasn't about creating another app, because Lord knows there's enough out there. It was creating something that women would actually use and find beneficial. And part of that for me was, or at least I thought initially until I started interviewing women, was we need to be able to control the pace and the distance and the time at which we go. All those things need to be in our control in order for this to be something functional. And sure enough, when we went out and started beta testing, we realized that women said, yeah, I mean, pace is always a big problem. Like, if I'm going to run with somebody, I want them to run at my pace. I don't want to have to
Yeah.
feel like I have to keep up with them. I want to be able to go the distance I want to go without being judged. So whether that's a mile or 5 miles or 10 miles, I want to do it at my pace when I want to do it, and just be able to have that control. So that's where Running Mate came about. And we literally are like Uber for runners. We match verified safe mates with runners when the runner's ready to go. So everybody on our platform has to be background checked. Whether you're a mate or a runner, you have to go through a background check in order to even complete a profile on our platform. And that's to
And
protect everybody.
oh, for sure. And are the mates women or men, or are they all men?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Our mates are 60-40 split, 60% men, 40% women.
Okay.
And then reverse that for our runners, we're about a 70-30. So 70% of our runners are women and 30% are men. Men, when we, really reach out and say, why would you sign, why did you sign up as a runner? Because we want to obviously make sure everyone feels safe when they run. 9 times out of 10, they tell us it's because they just want someone to go with, or they might be traveling to a city they may not know, and they want to go with someone that knows the city so they can kind of get us a cool sight, a sightseeing trip while they're there.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's a great idea. Because often I'm in a city and I'm like, 100%. It would be great to have somebody who knows where they're going.
Yeah, and you don't have to
Go.
worry about it. You don't have to constantly look at your phone and try to figure out, where am I going? How do I get back to where I started?
So if I was going to use it, an Uber, I could go right now and it would just like in 5 minutes, I would have an Uber. I imagine there's a little more of a process or not. Like, how do these people, are they always just sitting at a desk ready to run?
So it's kind of interesting. We have a 15-minute radius. So if you are outside of a 15-minute radius on the platform, you would not populate as a mate. But so let me back up. To get on the platform, it is in the beginning, until you have your profile built, it does take a little time. So I always tell people, if you want to use it today, don't download it today, because you have to go through your background check. And we do ask some questions in your profile. And the reason we do that is because the runner will always get to choose who they run with once they review the profiles. So let's say I've created my profile, I'm on the platform and I'm traveling to Atlanta and I want to go for a run. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. I wake up and I'm like, you know what? I've got an hour. I'm going to go for a run. I can open the app. I can actually look at the mates that are on the platform and I can read their profiles. And then I get to choose who I run with. When I select that mate to book now, that mate gets notified that they have a run. That mate has the option of accepting or rejecting that run.
Mhm.
So we do push notifications for them to realize. We're working on a toggle switch, but it's a little more work than what it sounds like to just toggle it on and off. But if you're within a 15-minute radius of where that runner is, you will auto populate and you will get notified that you have a run. You can then review that runner's profile and the pace and distance at which they've selected and choose whether or not you want to accept the run. If you reject the run, then the runner goes back into the pool and they can look at other mates in the area and pick from them. So it's a process between the two to select, but that way you are mutually connected that the mate is able to go and get to you and it's going to be a compatible run. But when we ask the questions, you are entering your average pace, your average distance, so that the runner would see right out of the gate. Like if I'm a 6-minute mile runner, I'm probably not going to choose someone that prefers to run a 10-minute mile pace. So that's going
Yeah.
to weed out a lot of the mates that you would have to choose from.
And how widespread is this service at this point?
So we currently are in 6 cities. And what I mean by 6 cities is meaning that we have launched in 6 cities that have enough mates to support runners. So we have an algorithm that we like to achieve. Our magic number is 75. We typically like to have 75 mates in a market before we go live in that market so that we can make sure the runner has a good pool of people to choose from. And then we'll kind of go live. We ended up last week launching nationwide because we are getting requests from people in, like, for example, Missouri. We would not have probably gone to Missouri for quite some time. And so we just went ahead and made the app accessible to anyone. And we'll see how that organic growth happens. But our main goal is making sure that as we see these things happening in different markets, we're supporting that market with enough mates that they've got good people to choose from. So we're really good at communicating via social media and our website when people are signing up, to let them know, okay, we are full on in your market. You've got this many mates to choose from, or bear with us. We don't have enough mates yet, but keep checking back kind of thing. So
Yeah, we'll put links to all that in the show notes, so people can find it.
awesome. Thank you.
Was starting this company a career change for you?
Yeah, so I've never been in tech before. Med device has been my background my whole career. So this is new. I've owned 3 businesses prior to running Mate, meaning I've had a brick and mortar store, I've had an online retail store, and then a wholesale to retail manufacturing company. All 3 I've exited. So this isn't my first time starting a company, but it is my first time ever being in tech. So this is all new for me. One of the things I'm realizing very quickly is that I don't belong in this space in the sense that I'm a unicorn in the space, meaning that I don't have a background in this
Mm.
space. So I'm real. I sometimes it can be an insecurity. I think you get around people who've been in this space, whether they're young or old, and they say words and talk about things that are probably over my head. But what I do know is that I'm using tech for good, and I'm in the space because it's a mission and I'm saving people's lives, and that's why I'm here. So I try to let some of that noise of being told sometimes even that I don't belong in the tech space, I let that be exactly what it is noise. Because I would challenge just about anybody that could endure some of the things I've been through
Mm.
and still continue to push forward on a day-to-day basis and stay focused on what I'm doing. And I do it because it is my mission, not because I have experience in tech or because I plan some like really big, huge exit and sail off into the sunset somewhere. So,
Yeah, I mean that's you have to find yourself, I can't imagine, in male-dominated spaces
Mhm.
often?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it definitely is. It's not just from a tech perspective, but even fundraising, from an investment perspective, less than 2% of female founders get funded. And
I've
so that
seen
is a
that.
huge challenge that I've had to come up against. And I've been told some of the craziest things, and it's fine because my whole life in med device has been, I say all the businesses I've had and the career I've had is just it's just a warm up to this what I'm doing right now because it built what I needed for all of those things built what I needed them to build. Like a dress rehearsal for me to be here right now. So the funding piece has been a huge challenge. However, I keep moving forward. We bootstrap. We took in some investment money. I was one of the Techstar social impact companies in 2024. So when it's needed to come, it's been there. And I just continue to believe that that's the way it's going to be because I was meant to do this. This is my purpose. So
Well, I appreciate that. I've very much enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate what you're doing. Is there anything, Dina, that we have not talked about that you wanted to make sure that the listeners heard?
no, I mean, I really appreciate the time. Hopefully this was impactful. The only thing I will say is we do have a lot of really great events coming up that we've partnered with families who've lost loved ones due to the senseless violence against female runners. So people can go on our website, they can see what we're doing, they can check out our press page. If there's anything at all people want to do to get involved, there's really any way to get in touch with us is either through social media or our website, and they can find us either one of those places. So
Perfect. Well, thank you again. Keep fighting the good fight, and we will support you any way we can.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, that's our show. Come on back next week when I sit down with Peloton sensation and hit play not pause fan favorite, Christine Dierkel. She has done a ton of work in the menopause space, and I just wanted to have her back on to talk all about it. So you will not want to miss that one. She does not disappoint. She never does. So come on back for that one. And until then, as always, stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause, and please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends, and please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.